Bud Not Buddy by Christopher Paul Curtis. Chapter 4. They hadn't locked the kitchen window. It slid open with just a couple of squeaks. Then I was inside the Amos house, crouched down like a cat burglar. Quick as a rabbit, I looked under the table to see if they'd moved my suitcase. It was still there. I got a whole lot calmer when I picked it up, and it was the right weight. I didn't think they'd taken anything out of it. I couldn't be sure until I looked inside, but I could do that later. I took in a deep breath and looked over at the icebox to see if the shotgun was still there. I let all the air out in a big puff when I saw it. Shucks, you'd think that with the Amoses being so doggone mean, they'd worry about leaving a big old gun like that out in the open. What if one of their visitors got real mad at them about something? I unlocked the back door and set my suitcase on the first step of the porch, so I could make a quick getaway after I was through paying those Amoses back. I opened the screen door real quiet and went back into the house. Fair's fair. The Amoses deserved what they were going to get. I can't all the way blame Todd for giving me trouble, though. If I had a regular home with a mother and father, I wouldn't be too happy about other kids living in my house either. Being unhappy about it is one thing, but torturing the kids who are there, even though they don't want to be, is another. It was my job to make sure other kids who didn't know where their mother and fathers were didn't have to put up with Todd. My heart started jumping around in my stomach as soon as I reached out for the shotgun. It was a lot longer and heavier than I thought it would be. I lifted it and felt how solid the smooth brown wood was against my shoulder. With it up close to my face like this, I could smell the gray metal of the barrel and the gun oil Mr. Amos used on it. I aimed the gun at the stove and pretended I was shooting at an elephant or a dragon or a tiger, or best of all, Todd. I imagined how it would feel to creep up to his bed while he was sleeping and put the shotgun barrel right in his nose. After that, I'd have to do some quick moving to get the grown-up Amoses. Unless they were real sound sleepers, the shotgun going off in Todd's room would give them a clue that something was going on. I lowered the gun. These things were just too dangerous to play with or to take chances with. That's why the first part of my revenge plan was to get this gun out of the way. If something went wrong and the Amoses woke up, I didn't want them rushing down to the kitchen to get the gun. I knew they'd shoot me in a flash and tell the home it was an accident. I took the gun outside and put it on the back porch in a corner where they wouldn't be able to see it until daytime. I felt a lot better when it was out of my hands. When I was back in the kitchen, I started opening cupboards looking for the drinking glasses. The first one I opened had the jelly jar they'd given me to drink out of at supper time. I walked over to the sink and turned on one of the spigots. These Amoses had hot running water right into the house. I let it run for a second to warm up and put a dish rag in the bottom of the sink so the splashing wasn't too loud. When the water was good and hot, I stuck the jelly jar underneath until it was filled to the brim. I started down the hall. Todd's door came open easy as anything. I tiptoed over to his bed. He was deep asleep, and his hands were crossed on his chest like he was ready for the graveyard. I dipped my middle finger in the water. It felt like the perfect temperature. I held my breath and picked up one of Todd's chubby hands. One of the older boys at the home told me if you dip someone's hand in a warm glass of water whilst they're asleep, they don't have any choice but to pee the bed. It's something about chemistry and biology, making some valve in your guts open up and whoop zoop sloop, you got a wet bed. I started to dip Todd's fingers in the water, but I couldn't dip more than 2 fingers at a time. Todd's bed stayed as dry as the desert. I tried holding Todd's hand flat and pouring water over it, but he still didn't wet the bed. Finally, I decided to just pour the water on his pajama pants. I pulled the blanket and sheet down and emptied the jar. His face twitched a couple of times, and for a minute it looked like his eyes were going to come open, but they stayed shut. He smiled, and the warm water from the jelly jar opened that little valve up, and Whoop, zoop, sloop. He soaked his sheets. I tiptoed out of the room and down the hall and out the door. My favorite saying in the whole world is, "He who laughs last laughs best." So I put my hand over my mouth and whispered, "Ha, ha, ha." I picked up my suitcase and walked to the street. Man, I was on the lam. I was just like public enemy number 1. If J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI saw me now, I'd be in some real serious hot water. Chapter 5. Being on the lam was a whole lot of fun. For about 5 minutes. Every time my heart beat, I could feel the blood pushing hot and hard on the inside of my sting spots and the bite on my hand. But I couldn't let that slow me down. I had to get out of this neighborhood as quick as I could. I knew a nervous-looking, stung-up kid with blood dripping from a fish head bite and carrying an old raggedy suitcase didn't look like he belonged around here. The only hope I had was the North Side Library. If I got there, maybe Miss Hill would be able to help me. Maybe she'd understand and would be able to tell me what to do. And for now, I could sneak into the library's basement to sleep. It was a lot later than I'd ever been up before, and I was kind of scared the cops catching me. I had to be real careful, even if it was in the middle of the night. Even if I was crouching down, sneaking along the street like Pretty Boy Floyd. At the library, I walked past a row of giant Christmas trees that were planted on the side of the building. There was a door on the side, with a light burning above it, so I kept walking in the shadows made by the big trees. When I got to the back windows, I almost busted out crying. Somebody had gone and put big metal bars on the windows. Even though I knew it was useless, I tried tugging at the bars, but they were the real McCoy, solid still. I headed back to the Christmas trees. They were low enough to the ground that no one could see me unless they were really looking, so I started opening my suitcase. Most folks don't have sense enough to carry a blanket around with them, but you never know when you might be sleeping under a Christmas tree at the library, so I always kept mine handy. I untied the strange knots that the Amoses had put in my twine, and I opened the suitcase. I could tell right away that someone had been fumbling through my things. First off, whenever I put the blanket in, I always fold it so that it stops all the other things from banging up against each other. But those doggone Amoses had just stuffed it in without paying no mind to what it was mashing up against. I lifted the blanket out and saw that everything else was still there. You might be able to say that the Amoses were some mean old nosy folks, but you couldn't call them thieves. I picked up the old tobacco bag that I kept my rocks in. I could tell by the way the drawstring was pulled that the Amoses had been poking through this, too. I jiggled it up and down in my hand a couple of times, and it felt like none of the rocks was missing, but I opened it to count them anyway. None of them was gone. Next I pulled Momma's picture out of the envelope I kept it in, and held it so the light from the library's side door would shine down on it. It looked like the Amoses hadn't heard it. This was the only picture of Momma in the world. Running across the top of it was a sign that was writ on a long, skinny flag. It said, "Boys and girls, follow the gentle light to the misbe-forgotten Moon Park." Underneath the sign, between two big wagon wheels, was Momma. She was about as old as I am now, and was looking down and frowning. I can't understand why she was so unhappy. This park looked like the kind of place where you could have a lot of fun. In the picture, Momma was sitting on a real live little midget horse. It looked tired and dragged out like those big work horses do, but it had a teeny tiny body with a big sag where most horses have a straight back. Momma was sitting right in the middle of the horse's back, riding him side saddle, except there wasn't any saddle, so I guess you have to say she was riding him side sag. She had 2 6-shooter pistols in her hands, and the way her face looked, you could tell she wished she could have emptied them on somebody. And I know who that somebody was. Momma told me it was her father, my granddad. He'd gone and ruined everybody's fun that day by getting in a big fight with my mother about the gigantic white 25-gallon Texas cowboy hat that she was wearing. Momma used to tell me, "That hard-headed man insisted insisted, mind you, that I wear that horrible hat. That hat was almost as big as Momma, and you could see it was fake, because as tall as it was, no real cowboy could have wore it without getting it knocked off his head every time he rode under a tree or some telegraph wires. Mamma told me that some man used to drag the midget horse all through her neighborhood with a camera, and if your Mamma or Daddy signed a piece of paper, he'd take some pictures of you, then come back in a couple of weeks so you could buy them. Mamma wasn't looking like she had rocks in her jaw because the hat was so fake that a real cowboy would have laughed you out of town for wearing it. She was mad because the hat was so dirty. When she used to tell me about it, her eyes would get big and burny, like the whole thing happened the day before yesterday, instead of all these years ago. She'd start moving around our apartment real quick, picking things up and putting them back in the exact same spot. "Filth," she'd say about the hat. "Absolute filth! Why, the thing was positively alive with germs. Who knows what type of people had worn it?" I'd say, "I don't know, Mamma." She'd say, "Who knows how many years it had been worn by? Who knows how many sweaty little heads?" I'd say, "I don't know, Mamma." She'd say, "The entire band on the inside was black, and I'm sure it was crawling with ringworm, lice, and tatters." I'd say, "Yes, Mamma." She'd say, "And that horrid little photographer didn't care. Do you imagine it ever occurred to him to wash it?" I'd say, "No, Mamma." She'd say, "Of course not. We meant less to him than the horse he mistreated so." I'd say, "Yes, Mamma." She'd say, "But your grandfather insisted. To this day I cannot understand why, but he insisted. Insisted!" I'd say, "Yes, Mamma." We had that conversation a lot of times. Me and Mamma having the same conversations lots of times is one of the main things I can remember about her now. Maybe that's because when she'd tell me these things, she used to squeeze my arms and look right hard in my face to make sure I was listening. But maybe I remember them because those arm-squeezing, face-looking times were the only times that things slowed down a little bit when Mamma was around. Everything moved very, very fast when Mamma was near. She was like a tornado, never resting, always looking around us, never standing still. The only time stuff didn't blow around when she was near was when she'd squeeze my arms and tell me things over and over and over and over. She had 4 favorite things to tell me. One of them was about the picture, and another one was about my name. She'd say, "Bud is your name, and don't you ever let anyone call you anything outside of that, either." She'd tell me, "Especially don't you ever let anyone call you Buddy. I may have some problems, but being stupid isn't one of them. I would have added that DY onto the end of your name if I intended for it to be there. I knew what I was doing. Buddy is a dog's name, or a name that someone's going to use on you if they're being false friendly. Your name is Bud. Period." I'd say, "Okay, Mama." And she'd say every single time, "And do you know what a bud is?" I always answered, "Yes, Mama," but it was like she didn't hear me. She'd tell me anyway. A bud is a flower to be, a flower in waiting. Waiting for just the right warmth and care to open up. It's a little fist of love waiting to unfold and be seen by the world. And that's you. I'd say, "Yes, Mama." I know she didn't mean anything by naming me after a flower, but it's sure not something I'd tell anybody about. Another thing she'd tell me was, "Don't you worry, Bud. As soon as you get to be a young man, I have a lot of things I'll explain to you." That didn't make me calm at all. That was Bud Caldwell's Rules and Things to Have a Funner Life and Make a Better Liar Out of Yourself, number 83. Rules and Things, number 83. If an adult tells you not to worry, and you weren't worried before, you better hurry up and start, 'cause you're already running late. She'd tell me, "These things I'm going to explain to you later will be a great help for you. Then Mom'd look hard in my face, grab a holt of my arms real tight, and say, "And Bud, I want you always to remember, no matter how bad things look to you, no matter how dark the night, when one door closes, don't worry, because another door opens." I'd say, "What? It opens all by itself?" She'd say, "Yes, it seems so." That was it. Another door opens. That was the thing that was supposed to have helped me. I should have known then that I was in for a lot of trouble. It's funny how now that I'm 10 years old and just about a man, I can see how Mama was so wrong. She was wrong because she probably should have told me the things she thought I was too young to hear, because now that she's gone, I'll never know what they were. Even if I was too young back then, I could have memorized them and used them when I did need help, like right now. She was also wrong when she thought I'd understand that nonsense about doors closing and opening all by themselves. Back then it really scared me, because I couldn't see what one door closing had to do with another one opening, unless there was a ghost involved. All her talk made me start jamming a chair up against my closet door at night. But now that I'm almost grown, I see Mama wasn't talking about doors opening to let ghosts into your bedroom. She meant doors like the door at the home closing leading to the door at the Amos's opening, and the door in the shed opening leading to me sleeping under a tree, getting ready to open the next door. I checked out the other things in my suitcase, and they seemed okay. I feel a lot better. Right now, I was too tired to think anymore, so I closed my suitcase, put the proper knots back in the twine, crawled under the Christmas tree, and wrapped myself in the blanket. I'd have to wake up real early if I wanted to get to the mission in time for breakfast. If you were 1 minute late, they wouldn't let you in for food.